history is only real when you make it real, and you make it real by injecting it into people's lives and making it make sense. You take old structures and you make them relevant or current, and then that makes history alive now and invokes interest in people to why is it here and what was its history, and it makes it alive and last.
That sound was integral to the formation and development of Apex, for without it, Log Pond, as Apex was once known, may have continued to be a sleepy hamlet amidst the trees and brush of this central North Carolina town. Historical legend holds that the name Apex was defaulted on the town by a railroad employee who noted on a map that Log Pond was located at the top of an approximately 15-mile incline. The employee circled the area of Log Pond and wrote the word Apex on the map to mark the spot. Today, the town proudly claims that it was named for the highest point on this portion of the Chatham Railroad. Central to the character, life, and development of Apex was and is the Apex Union Depot. Built 100 years ago, the building had a reputation even before the first batch of mortar was mixed. A 1911 fire ravaged most of the downtown. In response, the town leaders took drastic action.
The town that burnt down in 1911, town had passed an ordinance that if you build or rebuild, you have to build with brick. But that was no intention of the railroad. Apex did not rate a brick depot, but they were saddled in because of the ordinance that they had passed.
The little town that tamed the mighty railroad was about to welcome the iconic building that would become its symbol. The depot was built in 1914 by the Seaboard Airline Railroad for a cost of $8,586. Its original building plans serve as an excellent example of the social architecture of the Jim Crow era of racial segregation.
The depot was actually divided into three different sections. The baggage room, which was separate by itself, you could not enter the baggage room from inside the depot. The African American section was next to the baggage room and next to the white, sandwiched between the white section, and you could only enter that from the outside door. White side is the only side that could actually enter where the ticket office is. And of course they had the windows facing each side so they could sell tickets to either side. Most of what's outside you see is original. I think one baggage room door has been replaced, but other than that, and some glass windows have been replaced, of course. But other than that, the exterior remains pretty much untouched.
Distinguishing features of the exterior of the building are the bell-cast hip roof and galvanized metal shingles. The roof overhang shelters are supported at the corners with heavy chamfered brackets. Many of the authentic features are still evident inside the depot as well, including several windows of poured glass and frosted windows that obscure the white women's restroom, 3 fireplaces that once warmed the colored waiting room, white waiting room, and white women's retiring room are still intact. Today's visitors may also enjoy the iron light fixture with 6 railroad lanterns that hangs in the main lobby. The station master's office retains its original configuration. The walls jut out closer to the railroad tracks so that the station master could look out his windows and see the oncoming trains. The ticket windows that opened into both the white and colored waiting rooms are still intact and functional. During the heyday of the rail, both freight and passenger trains made many daily stops in Apex. These trains carried people, as well as freight including coal, timber, and livestock.
Apex was the largest mule distribution point in the state of North Carolina around the turn of the century. And so you can imagine a railroad hauling in mules all the time and then hauling them out, people buying them and shipping them everywhere.
Apex had become a boom town, and the railroad was its lifeblood. The depot was the gathering spot for business and personal transactions alike.
And we had the main line all the way from New York to Miami. This was the main line going north and south. They had two trains. I can't remember. One of them was called the Silver Meteor, which was strictly a passenger thing. But I mean, it shot, unless it had to stop here, it would shoot through here like a bullet. And but one went south in the morning, and one came back in the evening. But this was the main route, and everybody knew where the railroad station was in Apex.
By the late 1960s, train travel declined and passenger service to Apex was discontinued. The town acquired the depot from the railroad and moved the library there in 1973. The unusual layout and proximity to the still active train tracks created an eclectic and charming experience.
You could not have depicted the atmosphere by Hollywood, because you'd walk in here and it was willy-nilly stacks, the trains would go by and the things would rattle, and no, I didn't witness any books falling off the shelf or anything else like that, but the people were so wonderful. And it was just for any of us that just love books and love the quaintness of old bookshops, or the ambiguity of, knowledge in random places. It was heaven.
For the locals, the Apex Library was a treasured part of their hometown experience.
To get out of the house and actually come to downtown Apex was a treat. It didn't happen often. So one of the treats was to bring me to the library here at the depot. And I always remember walking in. It was such a big place. At that time, I thought it was. And I remember there was a clock in the depot, and it was just real quiet, real still, but that clock you could hear. And just to come here and check out books and just spend a little time in here, it was just, again, it was a treat.
And to walk down here, my daughter would walk down here and go to the library. Loved it. It was very small, but had a good selection of children's books. She loved to come down here and sit on the floor and, read the books.
I came up here, and this is where my youngest son got his first library card, in this building. And he is now 23.
Often, cherished landmarks are lost to time, but the Apex Historical Society was determined that the Apex Union Depot would be preserved. In 1988, the building was listed on the National Register of Historic Places thanks to the efforts of the Historical Society.
Well, one of the things the Apex Historical Society wanted to do was this was the centerpiece of town back then and still is. And this was not on the National Register. The only building in Apex was the old town hall across the street was on the National Register. So a goal was to do the depot. And I volunteered to do part of the nomination process. There's an architectural part of the nomination, also a historical part. I had a friend who was an architectural historian. He did the architectural part. I did the historical part and discovered quite a bit about the depot that I did not know, and probably no one else knew at the time. Depot has been described as very unique and the best small-town depot in central North Carolina as far as preservation goes.
Bigger and better things were on the horizon for Apex and its train station full of books. In 1996, the Wake County Library System opened the sprawling and updated Eva Perry Library. While the move meant that the town would have access to more books and resources, not everyone was excited to see the depot lose its tenant.
Strangely enough, the old-timers downtown, some of them didn't like that idea of the library moving. They just liked to be able to walk to the library, and they didn't like the idea of having to go out to all the way to Shepherd's Vineyard. They considered that carry.
With nothing as constant as change, the town leaders of Apex were poised to make a truly organic choice for its most recognized landmark.
And after the library relocated to the new building, we got to thinking before they moved, what are we going to do with this building? This building belongs to the town. And my idea was for it to become a chamber of commerce. They were in a small house on Upchurch Street. The problem with that, when people came to Town Hall, which was located where the present-day police station is, that was Town Hall then, and asked you how to get to the chamber, you'd have to tell them you can't get there from here. And it was very difficult to give them directions, and vice versa. So I thought this would be good to have as the Chamber of Commerce right downtown and in proximity to the town hall, so people could go across the street either way and do their business. And also at the same time, then they would see what was downtown. As things are in politics, nothing is ever easy. And I didn't realize that some of the council was dead set against the chamber, of all things, because the business people in the chamber had not supported them when they ran for election. So it was a knockdown, drag out. To me, it made sense for the chamber because then they wouldn't have to pay rent. The town leases it to them now at a nominal fee. And so anyway, it passed on a 3-2 vote. 3-2 vote, barely passed. And the chamber relocated here. And I think it's worked out really well because the depot is symbolic of the town and it's right in the middle of the town. So it's easy to find the chamber and then also for people to go downtown for an ice cream cone or whatever. So I believe this building and its occupants, the chamber, lend greatly to the downtown of Apex.
The Apex Chamber of Commerce officially took residence in 1996. The chamber kept the original layout of the building. Visitors enter the main entrance into what was once the white waiting room. The colored waiting room is an impressive conference room, while the white women's retiring room has been converted to office space. The baggage room, in keeping with tradition, is now used for storage. The executive director's office is in the same space and configuration as the station master's office. Historically recognized and refurbished, the beautiful brick icon at the center of town was about to receive some kindred company.
I think that the idea of obtaining a caboose came about when we heard that CSX was discontinuing the caboose. And it just, dawned upon us, wouldn't it be great to have a caboose to complement the depot? And so we wrote CSX, and the next thing I knew, I got a letter back that said, "Dear Mrs. Brooks, when and where would you like your caboose delivered?" It kind of was kicked from pillar to post or from rail to rail until we approached the city and asked if they would consider putting it next to the depot, which in our mind's eyes, that was the right place for it to be. So then we had to figure out how to make it happen. And we didn't have a lot of money, of course. So we begged, borrowed, and did almost everything we could to convince people of the necessity of having the caboose here. And we applied for a grant and did get a grant from them. The Greater Triangle. People gave us a grant of $5,000, which helped a lot. And the city gave us permission then to have the land, which they own, next to the depot. So now we had to talk CSX, which they agreed to, giving us the rail and the ties, and we went about building up the landscape, and Bill Sears, who is an Apex native, donated the help of his firm. And we had all of the site preparation done, and then we got a hoist, a regular crane, to lift the caboose, which is 55,000 pounds, all above the fiber optics of the Atlantic seaboard to its current site. It was scary, and the whole deal of acquisition and negotiation it seemed to have lasted forever. I often say that if the depot is the cake and the centerpiece of the town of Apex, that the caboose is the candle.
The Apex Chamber of Commerce now had a beautiful and historic home with a genuine Seaboard Airline Railroad caboose next door, but there was still something missing. A beautification project brought another partner onto the depot campus.
The garden club put their garden in 2005, and we've been maintaining it ever since.
The garden was a joint effort between the then president of the chamber, and it was a bit of barren land next to the caboose. And I'm not sure who approached who, but the joint effort was she put in the timbers, and I went around to the various businesses, Lowe's, Home Depot, Mulch Masters, Jeff down in Ace Hardware, and everyone made a contribution to the garden. So we got mulch, we actually had dirt, we had local people help us fill it all in. An irrigation company was kind enough to put in a drip irrigation system. We made a walk. We had a walk, and then we put for a little decorative purposes, we put a semi-bird feeder at the end with an Apex Garden sign on it. That was built by myself and another member's husband. We built that bird feeder and put it up. And the ladies maintained it.
And we get so many compliments on it. So we're so proud when people say that. It shows the effort that we put into it. And we just love to hear that.
100 years have passed since the first brick was laid at the Apex Union Depot. A town has grown up around it. The once robust trains that transported young and old were decommissioned and retired. Yankees moved south and now, along with the locals, call the peak of good living home. Sleek new trains run the rails. Progress marches on, and the depot goes, strong and proud, right along with it, changing with the times and bringing with it a legacy of the past.